Welcome back, everybody. This is Third Phase. I'm Rich Giordano.
And I'm Michael Roser.
And we are back for episode 3 of our 3-part series with Brian Forrester in Egypt. And I'm going to play this video like we've done the other 2 times, Michael. We're just going to see what they're talking about with Blake and anybody else who's in here asking questions to Brian. And then we'll look at the video, comment on what he said about what's in the video. So, ready?
Sounds good to me. Let's go.
I want to welcome everybody back to this premiere. Don't forget to like and subscribe, because that's how we became the fastest growing, newest UFO channel. So I'm going to play this video. We're going to give our opinion on what Brian Forrester said and anybody else who's in here. So here we go. And it's coming up in 3, 2, go.
Welcome back. Blake Cousins here, Third Phase Moon. The mysteries behind the megalithic structures discovered around the world. Well, we have the man who has developed a sequence of investigative tours around the world. Brian Forrester is with us, and we're going to go over the mysteries of Egypt and much, much more. Brian, thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase Moon.
My pleasure. Thank you, as always.
All right, Brian. I know recently you've been allowed access to unprecedented locations in Egypt, revealed to the public for the first time. Can you tell us about some of the mysteries that you've been involved with as of recent times?
Actually, our trip unfortunately had to be cut short by a few days because of the worldwide events that are going on. So we weren't able to go into what's called the Osiris Shaft, which is a vertical series of shafts that go into the Giza Plateau, about 200 feet underground in the bedrock. But I had been there twice before, and this time there's a site at Abydos, which is in central Egypt, and it's an ancient dynastic place. But there's a structure that was built on purpose underground there out of a combination of giant granite blocks, some weighing 60 tons, and then the perimeter that it's inside is made of quartzite. So the granite comes from Aswan, which is hundreds of miles to the south, and then the quartzite comes from Cairo, which is hundreds of miles to the north, and it's been off limits to the general public more or less forever. So we were able to look down into it, and all of a sudden, because of the influence of our tour...
Hey, doesn't that look interesting right there? How it's indented, but it still has the lines and stuff in it. You'd think it would be chipped off and there would be nothing underneath.
It's almost like it seems like that it's like a tinfoil or something comes to mind, where if you were to press it, everything on the outside remains intact, but you still get either that or the stone itself was melted somehow. I mean, how else would you get that?
But wouldn't it get mushy? You know what I mean? Look how straight those are. Those are defined lines in a bent or chipped off piece. Maybe there was that's the block, and then they just did it over that piece. But I don't think they would use imperfection, stones that look like that have flaws in them.
That's a good point. It's a very good point. It's just very curious. Again, as you're mentioning, the lines are going over, this abnormality here on the stone. And if you're looking at it closely, it does seem to have less reflectivity, than perhaps some of the other parts of the stone, which would indicate that perhaps it was chipped off and that's a rough patch there. That's curious, Rich.
See how it's nice and shiny here. It's shiny here a little bit, but it's not smooth. It looks like it's coarse. Interesting. All right, let's continue. It caught my eye, So anyway.
Into it. And all of a sudden, because of the influence of our tour director, this man came up to me and simply said, "Let's go." And he let me go down into the Osirion for half an hour by myself.
So you're saying unprecedented access you were given to, and to a place that hasn't been revealed to the public for the first time. Tell us, Brian, what did you experience down there? What did you see?
Well, it's a very like a lot of the megalithic sites, it looks very industrial in nature. People call everything a temple. Temple of the Moon or the Temple of the Sun or the Temple of Isis or whatever. But this is clearly a pre-dynastic construction because there's no mortar used whatsoever. It's just giant blocks, incredibly tight-fitting, like what we find in Peru and Bolivia and other locations. And no one knows what its original function is, but of course Egyptologists have to give it a name, so they call it one of the symbolic tombs of Osiris, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's perfectly bilaterally symmetrical, and as I said, it was built on purpose underground next to the dynastic temple, which is called the Seti Temple. So I was able to film quite a bit, thankfully, in there. So that's going to be, I'm putting little clips up on my YouTube channel, but the whole thing I'm going to wait for at least another couple of weeks.
This is amazing. I have to stop it here. Was he saying that this place was underground at one time?
I think that's what he's saying.
I thought he said that this is underground. I have to hear this one more time.
Find in Peru and Bolivia and other locations. And no one knows what its original function is, but of course Egyptologists have to give it a name, so they call it one of the symbolic tombs of Osiris, and that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. But it's perfectly bilaterally symmetrical, and as I said, it was built on purpose underground next to the dynastic.
That's crazy. Built on purpose underground. Let me get your thoughts on it first.
Well, my first thought, too, is in looking at some of this is that I think that it was a much more accepted way of life many, many years ago to live underground, whereas today it seems a bit strange. We're used to living in buildings and constructions that are, obviously above the ground. So, perhaps most of their civilization, or a really good portion of it, was conducted underground, and we're just finding this out now. Brian brings up a good point. They didn't really know what to call certain temples, and so they name everything temples. And I think this is more detrimental in the end than it is something progressive, because people will attach that significance to that particular structure no matter how many times it gets renamed based on its true purpose. The first name you hear is what sticks with you. So there's going to be a generation that still believes that these buildings are used for perhaps things that they are not, even in finding what they're actually used for. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, no, you said it perfectly. There's not much more I can add to that, other than you're saying that they probably lived underground and they were used to living underground. But aren't these just temples for people who died? Am I not reading this right?
I don't know that that's what it is. In my opinion, I think that's more of a speculative motion than anything.
What would this be right here? Like a walkway?
Could it be that they did have some sort of existence that was semi-permanent underground, wherein they had sort of underground cities? To me, these constructs are so vast that they couldn't have just been used for one purpose. I think there must have been multiple reasons that people were building these.
I would think that it's for a lot of things. I think it looks nice. I think it gave them work, and it gave them some purpose to. But you see, when they were walking through right there's writings on the walls. It's almost like a history lesson, or you see, I don't understand why they would have it. It means something if they put it on the walls.
Or we could go back to the theory we were talking about before, where these might actually be schools of learning in some sort of spiritual sense. And perhaps, the architecture was designed with that in mind at one point. But yeah, it's curious that there are writings on the wall, and, maybe it's akin to how we hang pictures today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe you're right.
But one thing I wanted to mention very quickly as to why I think the Egyptians might have been predominantly underground is look at the environment they were living in. Hot temperatures, scorching hot temperatures, freezing cold nights. It would just make sense, I think.
I thought that they lived in an era where there was more rain and the Nile was closer. It was more lush. That's how some people theorized. That's how they built the pyramids. They were able to just take the boats with the blocks right up to, maybe not right up to, but, a little ways away.
That's possible,
I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I might not know everything about the demographics and the the geology that was there present at the time. But that's, I'd like to look into that a little bit more, how the Egyptians actually lived day to day.
Let's not forget the Sphinx was underwater, and that's been proven by what's his name, Carlson. I can't remember his full name, but him and what is it, Grant Cameron? No, not Grant Cameron. Who's the other guy?
I'm bad with names.
The guy who has the book. Richie, what is it called? The Fingerprint of the Gods.
I know what you're talking about too. I can't remember his name.
Not Grant Cameron, but yeah. All right, let's continue on. When I remember the name, I'm going to shout it out, but somebody's going to put it in the live thing here in the premiere. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe. We really appreciate that support. And Michael, super chats. You guys got super chats available now. I almost forgot. All right, back to the show.
Yeah, we're able to share some clips right now at Third Phase of Moon. Special thanks to Brian Forster, and make sure you're going to subscribe to his channel to look at the full-length videos of what he captured at Abydos. But can you tell us some of these granite blocks? They weigh massive amounts, up to 50 tons, you say? How is it possible that they were able to bring these granite stone, down to these subchambers below the surface?
Well, that's one of the great mysteries, and the level of precision is, at least 21st century in terms of the technology that would have been required. And we know that for most of dynastic Egypt time, they had bronze tools, just like in Peru, they had bronze tools, and so that doesn't explain how up to 60-ton blocks were cut from a quarry at Aswan in the southernmost point of modern-day Egypt and moved, hundreds of miles to the north, and then also the quartzite ones that were moved from Cairo. So, once you've spent time in these megalithic sites, you obviously see the difference between what the dynastic people could have done and what they couldn't have done. And the great thing is that Egypt is opening up more and more of these ancient locations that were off limits, and now they charge a pretty hefty fee, but when we go back next March, our whole group will have access to this same location for 2 hours.
Wow, I mean, you have to think about this. They brought those stones, those blocks, 60-ton blocks, 100 miles, couple hundred miles even, from the north and the south. We didn't touch on it the last time, but we've been talking about it the last couple of episodes. It's really unbelievable how they moved those. What do you think they used?
So if there is a room underneath one of the paws of the Sphinx that is a record-keeping room of some sort of hall of records, that would mean that it's probably related to Atlantis or Lemuria or one of those sort of civilizations. So if that's the case, my opinion is that these were built far, far before the Egyptians came. And I don't necessarily think that in some respects we can even look at the Egyptians of having some of this technology, because I think it came before. Maybe some was still left over and there was still some knowledge to be had at the point that they finally came in and decided to take over that area. But to me, I think these were built long time ago, way before the Egyptians came into the picture, although we attribute the Egyptians as being the prime culture that stayed there. What do you think, Rich?
Why? Yeah, thank you. Why do they? Why? If their civilization came about around the times they're telling us that they built these things, so why are we questioning who built them?
Right.
So, okay, so you just mentioned it. And, we're just regular guys here. We're not experts on this. Not that we need to keep saying it, but it's to remind the people, we're just like you. We have questions about these things. And Brian's given us answers, but not all of them. We'll have them in future episodes. But why are people saying that the Egyptians walked upon these things and they claimed it? They claimed that they were the ones. So they erased all the original records, I'm assuming.
Or we're just not seeing those. Yeah, it's possible. I mean,
Or is it being hidden from us?
I was just going to say that there's a possibility that it's been buried still, or we have yet to find those records. I mean, look at the Sumerian records and how long it took us to find and put together some of those stories to make sense of things. Maybe it's because the Egyptians have so much imprint on that part of the land that we've, archaeologically found a lot of evidence of them being there and just assumed that they were the only ones, or they were the biggest culture in that place. What do you think?
I don't think we assumed. I think there's records that say they are the ones who created these things. Even if it wasn't them, they're claiming they did. They probably erased everything. What I want to know is, did we actually find the truth of who actually built them? And it's so outlandish, maybe off-worldish, that we couldn't let the public know that aliens made the pyramids and everything else before the Egyptians got there. And if that's the case, here's a great question: where'd the Egyptians come from? If they didn't build the pyramids, where were they living before? They just popped up?
Perhaps they were a nomadic culture prior to settling in Egypt.
No, I don't think so. No,
I don't know.
Man.
I have no idea.
If you have pyramid building technology, you just don't pop up like grass and then just walk up upon these pyramids there and say you built them. I think the Egyptians built them with the help of some technology. Maybe that's lost, or maybe it's buried still, or maybe it was aliens with the help of them. I like to think it was the help of aliens.
I like that too.
But darn it, you know what I want to do? An episode trying to debunk this one day. I bet you I won't be allowed to. I won't be allowed to. Zawi Hawass will come down on third phase of moon with the wrath of all those gods he made up. All right, here we go. Let's continue on. This gets good now. This is where it gets good. It's all good, but this is where...
When we go back next March, our whole group will have access to this same location for 2 hours.
So why do you think that Egypt is kind of loosening up some of these sites and opening it up to the public? Is it just for financial gain, or are they trying to get the information out and share the wealth of history that they actually have in their past?
Well, it's a combination of things. For a long time, there was a man called Mr. Hawass who was in charge of the Council of Supreme Antiquities, and he was very controlling. He was also, I think, financed by the Edgar Cayce Foundation, and so he limited what people could get access to. Like, we do know that there...
Wait a minute. Did he just say the Edgar Cayce Foundation?
I think he did mention that,
Edgar Cayce, the psychic dude. No, he did not.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Okay, this just proves to me that Zawi Hawass is full of it. I'm not going to get into why. No, I'll tell you what. If Zawi Hawass is going to believe in psychics and things like telekinesis, then that means he knows there was some technology that was different than what we are being told. That's what I believe.
There's no question in my mind that I think that he knows more than he's letting on, and probably why he was so staunch about allowing people to view certain things or have access to them. Who knows? Maybe he was a front for something else that was trying to keep this under wraps. But, He
was. But he was making a lot of people mad. So they gave him another role instead of the keeper of antiquities, or whatever he was called. All right, continue. I went back a few seconds so we could hear him say Edgar Cayce, because I just want to double check. Like I said, everybody here, we're not experts. There may be one or two, but just talking like regular people do and have real questions. All right, here we go.
And so he limited what people could get access to. Like, we do know that there are openings in the Sphinx itself. There are at least 3 different openings there that have been revealed through older video clips.
How beautiful.
And the new head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities is simply... I think he wants to show more of the grandeur of ancient Egypt and some of the so some of the younger Egyptologists are realizing.
Oh, stop it. You know what I just realized?
What?
Zawi Hawass is all about money.
You just
That's
realized
what
that?
it is. Well, during this, you got me there. Well, I know, but it just, for everybody here, don't you think that's what it's about? It's the tourism. That's what it's all about. That's why they keep digging and digging and digging.
Mhm.
Was it you who told me who are we to dig up the dead? How would we like? I mean, is there a time limit or a statute of limitations to when you can dig up somebody in their grave and look at what they wore and get into their personal effects? Was that you?
No, it wasn't, but that does make a lot of sense. What
I mean,
right
what
do
if-
we have?
What if we go, well, how about you and I right now just go dig up Abraham Lincoln? I'm curious about his past.
Right, exactly.
The same thing.
It
Who
is.
are we to dig up these poor people? They figured they were going to be there forever. And now we're dismantling everything they built. It's kind of sad.
Yeah, we may find in the future that we never actually needed to dig up those tombs. I don't know. I'm throwing something out there. I mean, we may find enough information peripherally that, maybe that's a practice that we abandon at some point. There's not the same respect, for the dead that perhaps the people that buried those, pharaohs and so forth had. And same with other cultures too. I mean, there's no real respect when it comes to that sort of thing. And that's a whole nother topic that we could delve into another point for sure.
But imagine if the afterlife is what they expected it to be, and now we're going there and we're ripping their heads off, pulling off their limbs. What if we're pulling it off in the afterlife too?
Dude, that's horrible. But
I
it's a very
know.
good point in respect to the culture and legend. Yeah.
Spiritually speaking,
Yes.
you're a spirit and you've got these arms and legs, and all of a sudden one falls off and then it's put back on, but it's backwards or something. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. I'll have to take that out, but backwards arms don't really fly on third base. Goof on that would fly.
No,
All
but
right,
something interesting that I always keep in mind, and I don't know how much validity there is to this, but it's something I've come across in my travels. Somebody that I knew had a grandmother who passed away, and they cremated her. And sometime later had a reading where the grandmother came in and said, I'm a little upset. And, psychic says, well, why is that? And she says, because I could feel you burning my body. I wasn't completely out of it yet. And this happened 3 days after she had passed away. And apparently there was something still connected that she could feel her body burning. So
wait a second. Hold on. I'm confused. You just said she died, and then 3 days later she said she felt it? I'm confused.
Sorry, let me clarify. So she died, and then 3 days later her body was cremated.
Right.
In a psychic reading later on, not too long after, it might have been a year or so, she came in and said, hey, I'm a little upset because I could feel my body burning, my physical body. I wasn't totally out of it yet.
Interesting.
It is. It's interesting.
I don't like that at all.
Me neither.
I mean, we just talked about near-death experiences last night, and that scares me a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Let's continue here. We could talk all day about all this stuff. It's amazing.
I know it.
I don't think they should be digging. Well, you know what they should be doing? How about this? How about you don't pull everything out, you leave it there, and then you build like glass walkways over it. People can look down on it. I guess that would be too expensive. I don't know, man. You're right. We don't have the same respect for them. And why would we? That's what I mean. It's all about money. I don't know if it's right, man. Don't we know enough already? Or did they find something so compelling that they have to keep digging to look for more?
It might just be that we feel so removed from that culture or society because it's so old and it doesn't seem like there's a modern remnant in front of us that we just say, hey,
You're
screw
right.
it. We're going to do this.
Yeah, you're right.
And the new head of the Supreme Council of Antiquities is simply, I think he wants to show more of the grandeur of ancient Egypt.
The new guy.
And some of the younger Egyptologists are realizing that there is this pre-dynastic period of construction and they can't openly say that to the public yet, but we had one of the best with us, and some of the stories he told me were just mind-boggling.
Can I just say something? That person riding that horse has no idea how to ride a horse.
I noticed that too on the left.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
No, we're talking about it. You're going to go on a horse in Egypt. You need to look at that. It's like she's almost...
The pre-dynastic
Not to be
period
funny, but
of
I think you're going to hurt your spine.
They can't openly say that.
It looks like there's a dummy on there.
Us, and
they just propped her up and
yep.
said, just hold on, lady. All right, let's continue this, right?
From over 12,000 years ago, beyond that, where did this civilization end up? Where's the evidence of their tools or their history? Is it written on the walls, or is this something that the history still has yet to consider, these pre-dynastic civilizations?
Well, they're slowly starting to realize it, because so many of us have gone there and filmed these places and showed the difference between what the dynastic people could have done and what they couldn't have done. So it's leaking into the public anyway, and that's the best way.
That's probably an accurate depiction of what it looked like. They could tell where things were.
Mm-hmm.
I would have loved to have been there, man.
Can you imagine being the first civilization to stumble upon this, site after the Egyptians had kind of vanished? It's just the intense exploration you had in front of you. And it's been said that the pyramids at Giza were actually capped with gold at one point. So I don't know how much that is true, but that's been said.
You see the top here of the pyramid?
Mm-hmm.
That's what it was covered with. And it was covered with this reflective stone. I can't remember what they were called. But the very tip had a gold triangle that capped it off, the gold cap. And that was the marker for the large pyramid. Beautiful must have been, but obviously taken. Yeah, can you imagine this thing looking like all of this, smooth, all the way from top to bottom? Oh my God.
I feel like a fantasy, honestly.
It is,
fantasy
man.
World,
Gosh, man, it makes me... That's why I like that movie Stargate.
Mm-hmm.
They go back into that kind of era on another planet, though.
I love
cool.
that.
Yeah, it's a cool movie. All right, in 3, 2, 1.
So let me get this right, Brian. So these pre-dynastic civilizations that built these megalithic structures, their technology matches, if not goes beyond modern day technology. Could you tell us how the hell did they get this information and technology over 12,000 years ago to build these megastructures? Where's the evidence of these other megastructures so that they had some prototypes? Where are the prototypes, and how did they get this information and dive straight into these incredible megastructures out of?
So what he's asking, and you and I are going to talk about it before we hear Forrester. What do you think? How did they do it? Oh, no, let me scratch that. Where's all the practice pyramids leading up to it?
That's a very, very good question, and one I just don't have an answer to, unless they came from another part of the planet where they were thriving at one point, built their own pyramids there, because there are pyramids all over the place. So maybe they were a part of an earlier culture and had practice that way. Otherwise, I don't have an answer. What do you think, Rich?
I have an answer. I'm so glad you didn't say it. I thought maybe you listened to what I was saying earlier in the week and you were going to steal it. Thank God you didn't. I'll tell you what. These pharaohs, kings, whatever you call them, had huge egos. Do you think they would leave incomplete or damaged pyramid? They dismantled them. Nobody would never see an incomplete work on purpose.
That's a great
point. They dismantled it. Of course it is. They cleaned it up, swept it under the rug. It never happened. And if it did, well, you could die. So they would, get rid of it if you left it there. I don't know.
Well, I mean, so if that's the case and they dismantled these, if they were, after the pharaoh died or what have you, why wouldn't they keep these up as a memory or some sort of homage?
I'm talking about... No.
Did I miss the point entirely?
I don't know, but they don't dismantle the ones that were perfect. They dismantle the ones that were imperfect.
The practice
or
ones? Okay.
Practice ones. Yeah.
Okay,
That's
yeah, that would make sense.
Because their egos wouldn't allow anybody to see mistakes, and if there was a mistake, they would just get up and move 30 miles away like we didn't do it, and then they'd go back and dismantle it like, I don't know who did this, but we're gonna take it down for you. We do it today with broken down stadiums and buildings. We demolish them and get rid of them. Those are completed but broken down. And if something was incomplete, like if a project ran out of money and funding and whatnot, it would stand for a little bit, but eventually be tore down or reconstructed.
Yeah, and there's a possibility that one of the reasons that they were tearing down perhaps the practice pyramids is because they needed the materials.
Yeah, exactly. They took those materials. Those blocks were already ready to go.
Yeah, great thought, Rich.
I know. Nobody else is saying it though. How come nobody else said, well, I can imagine where our practice ones were? What do you mean practice? Are you talking practice? Nobody wants to see a practice pyramid. Jeez.
I'm laughing, but you have a point here. I mean, it's true. Like, that makes sense. And of course, again, in the way of industrialization, it would make more sense for them to recycle those materials once they were done playing with the blocks,
We're smarter than we look.
Maybe.
No, I speak for myself. I can't speak for you. It's true.
That again is the mystery, but the evidence is the fact that they exist and the fact that they're made out of hard stone, so they've lasted, several thousand years, older than the dynastic time period. People keep asking where are the tools. Well, they either took the tools with them, or the tools have been found and they're being hidden underneath the Cairo Museum.
Right.
Those are the two plausible answers. But we've also found evidence of catastrophic events having occurred about 13,000 years ago, including heat scorching in locations like Karnak, and a lesser-known site in the Nile Delta to the north called Tanis, where you see that the surface of the stone has been scorched by flashes of high heat, and that's been backed up by our geologist who always comes with us. So that's the reason why you always, or almost always, see cataclysmic damage at this site. And it's the same in Peru. Like, none of these structures are perfectly intact. They show signs of massive cataclysmic events occurring in those locations. And if it was heat, for example, like solar plasma from the sun, which is Robert Schoch's theory, that would have vaporized any life form in the area, and could have even melted any metallic tools that were there, so they would be unrecognizable.
Okay, so he's saying three things could have happened to the tools. They got destroyed by this major heat wave of whatever catastrophe happened. Mm-hmm. They were taken. They took them with them. Or what was the third one?
They were buried, maybe? Or
destroyed? There was two, and then I just added the third one. Anyway, I remembered the guy's name. It was Randall Carlson and what's his name? Graham Hancock.
Okay.
And if anybody wants to see an incredible episode, and I know I'm talking about Joe Rogan, but it talks about the cataclysmic event that he's talking about, Forrester's talking about, and that now there's evidence that there was this cataclysmic event that created a wave of 1,000 feet tall that ran over the Midwest and everything. It's amazing. The Midwest, what am I talking about? All over the world. But it happened here too. Mm-hmm. The same wave. Oh God, that was weird. I think about America.
It's so weird that we don't have any tools in our possession. Oh, the other thing that he mentioned was maybe they're being kept secret somewhere. If the tools were harder than the stone and the stone is preserved, where are the tools? It's a very strange thing, man. That
isn't, or yeah, you'd think they would be next to wherever they were digging, like in a shed or something or something like that. Yeah. All right. Well, let's continue on. We're seeing a lot of this heat signature, but there was also a lot of water too that came through this area. The flood, with the Sphinx and all the rain. They think it may have rained for a long time, like years on it, like totally torrential rainfall.
I've heard that.
Like 1,000-year rainfall. It just rained all the time. I don't know if that's true, but Randall Carlson was talking about that. You guys should go check that out. It's actually really good. All right. Do you know that episode I'm talking about? Have you ever seen that?
Yes, I have.
They were on a couple of times. I think he passed away already.
Did he?
Randall Carlson, yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think so. All right.
In Egypt, you have this catastrophic event, but then in the continent of America, we have the Ice Age. There's different contrasts of heat. You have the Ice Age on one side of the planet, and then this catastrophic plasmic wave from the sun.
That's what I was thinking of.
Destroying the civilizations that built these megalithic structures. Is this the reason why we're not seeing any kind of massive pyramids in the American continent?
Yeah, well, basically, Canada and the United States were buried in 1 to 2 miles of ice up until the end of the last ice age. And the end of the last ice age was very rapid. People think that it was a slow melting of the glacier, but there's more and more evidence that it was incredibly fast. That caused the world's oceans to rise by 350 to 400 feet in a very short time period. We're talking maybe less than a year. And that could have also destabilized the planet itself. At the most ancient sites in Egypt, we see that their alignment is off by 23.5 degrees from north, south, east, and west. So that could be that at the end of the last ice age, you had actually the axis of the planet shift. And that's why these sites are suddenly off. And the dynastic sites are almost perfectly aligned north, south, east, and west.
Yeah, that's interesting, man. I didn't know that. You want to comment first?
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. It couldn't have been said any better. That would stand to reason, what he's proposing.
I agree. And we'll continue on because that one was really obvious to me. I can't think of anything better. Makes sense. All right.
You were telling us a little earlier in the interview that you were getting knowledge from this tour guide or some officials in Egypt that would blow you away. Can you tell us a little bit of insight? What did he tell you?
Well, we were given access to something that has never been open to the public. I just remembered that's the Step Pyramid at Saqqara. And the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, academics say, is the oldest pyramid. It was the first experiment at building a pyramid. So they built a step pyramid. And then after that, they think that the Great Pyramid, Second Pyramid, and the Third Pyramid were constructed. But that's not actually the case. The Step Pyramid is the first pyramid that the dynastic people built. But they used as a model the Great Pyramid because it already existed. And so I didn't know, but I was told about a year ago by Nassim Haramein that he was given access to the inside of the Step Pyramid, and that there's a giant shaft that goes straight down in the middle. So we paid for that last month, and we got to go inside. There's a causeway that goes down into it, and it's several hundred feet that you walk through to get to the central core, and then you look down, and there's a massive shaft that goes down hundreds of feet with a giant box in the center made of huge blocks of granite. And I was told by the guy that we had that it actually goes several stories underground, and that will be opened up over the course of time. So it's that gives more proof that there's a giant system of tunnels underneath, especially the Giza Plateau area, it's a bunch of tunnels that interconnect with one another. And they've even admitted, the Egyptologists admitted that there's one tunnel that goes at least 1.5 miles. And that's an official story.
This is crazy. I don't know if there's proof that there's this huge connection of tunnels all over COVID. I think he's assuming there is. Is he assuming that there's tunnels, or are they all connected? Because I don't remember hearing that they're all connected and there's this, all these causeways and tunnels that all connect. And have you ever heard of that? That
No,
they're
this is
all
the first
connected?
time for me. Nope, this is the first time I've heard that they might be all connected. I was aware that some of these underground constructions go for several stories, as he mentioned, perhaps more than that, but I wasn't aware that they could be all connected. And yet again, that sort of stands to reason. Why not? I mean, they're close enough in proximity and people are already underground. Why wouldn't they connect them? And we do this sort of thing today when we build deep underground military bases and things of that ilk.
The thing is, it's a lot of work, and these went a couple 100 feet, he said.
Mhm.
I don't think they meant to make an underground system connect. I think they just made these tunnels every time they had to add somebody to this tomb. And I think they were just making it really beautiful, for the afterlife. And also maybe people could walk by and see them and, pray. Maybe like it was like you see the sarcophagus there and you stop, and that was whatever king it was for that time, pay your respects, move on. Maybe light a candle, would leave a donation or something. That's what I think these were. But am I wrong, or do we know?
Well, if that was the case, that means that there must have been some traffic coming in and out of those alleyways, if you will. I mean, that's not the right word, but in those tunnels, in order for something like that to be there, right?
I would think.
Yeah.
And that's why these tunnels are the way they are, because I think people walk through to pay their respects. Maybe every day people could just go walk through it.
It's a good thought, man. It really is.
Maybe I should be an Egyptologist. I don't know. It's not that hard, Mr. Forrester. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, right.
It'd be great though to do what he's doing.
Oh
And
yeah.
I think they charge like $2,500 for like 2 hours to go into these tunnels. So it's good if you go with a group, like you said in episode 1.
Mhm.
All right, we're nearing the end. All right, here we go.
Of the technology and the elaborate tunnel system beneath the pyramids themselves, it makes no sense to me why they would do this unless there was some kind of correlation between all the pyramids and a design behind it. Some people actually claim, and the history books claim, that the pyramids are nothing but tombs for pharaohs, but the history also reveals that there's been no pharaohs found within these ancient pyramids.
Right.
Well, what do you think the ancient pyramids were designed for?
Well, the thing is that there, thousands of bodies were buried in the area of the Giza Plateau, but those were chambers and shafts that already existed. So the dynastic people simply used these rooms and chambers and tunnels and shafts as tombs because they were already there. They didn't construct them. There's no evidence, of course, that the Great Pyramid was ever used as a tomb. Actually, none of them. I think there are probably about 8 super ancient pyramids, and then you have the dynastic pyramids, which are much more inferior in terms of construction. And it appears that the ancient pyramids were resonant devices of some kind, not necessarily electricity producing, but energetic in nature, using the energy of the earth itself to enhance and focus that energy, and then project the energy out to the obelisks, which are also pre-dynastic, because the obelisk, the largest, was never completed at 1,200 tons. They are pre-dynastic because they're made of one piece of granite, again from Aswan. And the unfinished one is still in the quarry at Aswan. There's no way that could have been done during dynastic times. So we also have, again, evidence of ancient cataclysms that suddenly stopped activity. So you have this giant unfinished obelisk. You have the site of Tanis in the Nile Delta that looks like a huge explosion occurred there and just blew everything up. And then you have the dynastic people taking those giant pieces of stone and building other buildings with them in the same relative location. But also Tanis is a hill, and there are, I think, 6 plants that grow there. That's it. the whole area, like the Nile Delta is incredibly fertile in terms of growing food. Then you have this basically bald hill that has 6 spiky plants growing on it. And when you walk around on the surface, it's like walking on the moon. There is no soil. It's more or less like dust that has no nutrient value in it anymore. Again, that would have been the result of being hit by a giant blast of heat.
I just want to point out, when you're looking over the last bit of video we just saw, you're going to notice a lot of this grooving amongst the stone. And, you know, where there are parts that are a bit smoother, and, you know, you can find that in different areas. This is indicative of what I think is a man-made tool. I mean, it's obviously imperfect.
Oh, yeah.
And again, you have these scoop marks or grooves that go throughout. So, I mean, this sort of just deepens the mystery as to how this worked. Because if they did have some sort of, esoteric technology, maybe they were using it in conjunction with, manual labor in some sort of way, shape, or form. And that makes it even more difficult to discern what actually happened or what they were using for tools. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, you're right. That's what's throwing everybody off. You see the man-made portions of this, where they smoothed it out. Like you'll see coming up here on this, there's little waves in there, like they were sanding it down, but or it even looks like they even had machine, like right there. Mm-hmm. Like this looks like it was done with like a Brillo pad or some sort of sander, even, that maybe they used it with their hands. But why is it grooved? Because they're not finished with it. Mm-hmm. And this is just part of the process. It'll look like this, I think, when they're done, the top part.
It still looks like they used some sort of boring machine, because there's consistency amongst the tracks. It looks like it was the same tool that made each one of those lines.
Almost as if the tool went into the crack and just chipped away everything here. Now, I think it might be sound, vibrations from sound that's blasting all this away. We use that technology today when people get rid of stones, in their kidneys and stuff like that. They're using sound technology. So that's what this looks like to me. Not only that, they were using, assuming it was this type of technology, they used sound waves to move the blocks and create a wave of energy that could lift. And I believe that. I believe that's what they were using. But yeah, when you have humans working alongside maybe alien technology, it looks like something from out of this world, man. Like, how are they doing this 12,000 years ago?
It's a very good question, Rich.
We can't do it today.
I know it.
That's embarrassing.
It'd be hard to imagine where we'd be today if this cataclysmic event didn't happen and these pre-dynastic civilizations continued to build these megalithic structures. What would it look like on Earth today if this major catastrophe didn't happen? Any theories on that?
Oh, well, we would be incredibly advanced. We would easily be going to the stars by now. If you had 13,000 years of increased industrialization, increased advances in science and things like that. So, but this, it's also believed by some that these cataclysms happen every 13,000 years. So we're actually getting relatively close to that time period. I don't think it'll happen in our lifetimes. It might, but that's why it's important to cherish every day that we do live.
100%, Brian. And recently, there's been people looking at the Atlas Comet recently that's kind of come into nearby to planet Earth. What do you make of these celestial objects that do kind of threaten Earth in possible ways? The technology we have now, maybe we could divert some of these cataclysmic events.
Well, there are many celestial objects come very close to hitting us. It's not that infrequent. And about a year and a half ago, they discovered in Greenland that there's an asteroid that hit the Earth probably about 13,000 years ago, and it's a mile in diameter. It's made of nickel iron, and its force of strike would have been, they calculate something like 50 million times the power of the Hiroshima bomb. So that could have been one of the things that destabilized the planet, caused it to wobble and then recenter itself, because that could explain why our planet's at 23.5 degrees and not straight up and down. So that's a recent discovery. And that's, we're getting more and more information, more and more science is coming out showing that the series of events happened over the course of probably about 1,000 years. It wasn't like a one-day event, but it was a series of things that happened, destabilized the planet, wiped out all of the megafauna in North America. That's why you find all of those woolly mammoths in Siberia flash frozen with food still in their stomachs. Again, I think that tells us that the planet suddenly was turned in position from vertical to 23 degrees, causing that flash freezing, then the rising of the sea level, the burying of any civilization that would have been close to the seashore at that time, as in Atlantis. Atlantis didn't sink, but the water level rose very, very quickly and caused massive destruction and causing any survivors to escape as fast as possible to find a new homeland.
I have to say this before I forget. I'm gonna blow everybody's mind away right now. It's very rare, but I know what happened. You want to hear it?
I do.
Well, I'm glad you said you did, because there was a time, and you'll know what I'm gonna say here in a minute, seconds. There was a time where people wrote about or drew about a time when there was no moon. What if the moon was being brought here, or not brought, but whatever, it was on its way here, hit the Earth at that time, and then found itself in position? It got stuck in the Earth's gravity, and this was part of pushing the planet off to 23 degrees. And then when the moon, got in position, it stabilized the planet.
It's a very, very good thought. And I have to say that there's a lot of validity to that in respect to, where the Earth is now. Within the idea of these cataclysmic events happening throughout history, is it possible that the moon was somehow placed in our orbit to sort of offset some of that? Is that what you're saying? Or is that
No.
Am I extending on that a little bit?
There's two parts to this. Either when it was being brought here, it was probably, flown here or however, but I think maybe they couldn't slow it down, or maybe they have to hit the Earth to slow it down, and maybe they hit it at a certain part that it wouldn't destroy the Earth, but they know they've done it before. It's like shooting pool. You know what type of English you need to put on that cue ball to make it go where you want it to and still sink the ball you want. It could have been that type of planning and design. Now, the Earth wasn't off its wobble. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't off its axis, and wobbling. It was stable. And then they brought the moon in. It got unstable for a little bit, and it took maybe 20,000 years to destabilize itself. And then, or 10,000 years, or 5,000, or 1,000 years, I don't know. Maybe that's the 1,000-year catastrophic event period, that it rained a lot in that area because it was off its axis. It was trying to get back to normalcy.
It's some sort of balance. No, but it's something to think about. Absolutely. No, I like that a lot.
Because what else would cause it? Several comets? I don't know if several comets are together. I've never heard of a cluster of comets. Have you?
No, not in this respect. No.
Usually it's just one, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe in the tail, there's some other little ones that are maybe that's what they mean. But there isn't one here, and one here,
right?
And it's going to hit the Earth. I think it's possible because there's been writings about the moon being brought here.
I would be curious to know if that was pre-antediluvian, or when exactly we could put our thumb on this and say that the moon appeared around this time, because I'm curious if it was around during the days of Atlantis.
The moon.
I just don't know.
If it was, they would have. Well, do we have any? We don't even know if we have any Atlantean history that they
Right.
wrote about the moon or anything. So are there any depictions at Göbekli Tepe? Oh, wait, what is it? Göbekli Tepe?
Go back. Now that you're asking,
See, you did
go
it
back,
too.
Tepe.
Right. Göbekli Tepe. Are there any depictions on any of those little monoliths that they found of the moon? How about in the caves 20,000 years ago? Did they
Mhm.
have the moon up there? They always showed the stars, and then there would
Right.
be other things, but I don't know if they ever showed the Earth and a little tiny dot next to it as the moon.
I can't say that anything jumps into my recollection that way either. I do remember what you're saying, some of the constellations and stars and so forth in the sky, but I don't remember seeing a moon specifically. That would be something to look into, Rich.
So if the moon, I know it's a stretch, guys. I can hear everybody saying it wasn't the moon. Well, and it probably isn't, but there was a period of time where it was said the moon was brought here. I'm thinking that maybe there would be some scarring. We would see scarring of the moon hitting the Earth 12,000 years ago, I would think. So that's the only reason I don't think that's what it is.
Well, I don't think that, although what you're proposing is interesting and possibly plausible, I don't necessarily think the moon itself hit the Earth. I think that there's too much mass behind a celestial body like that it would cause cataclysmic damage, more than, maybe what we could record today would just maybe take a chunk out of the Earth. But then again, I've never witnessed planets colliding myself personally. So again, it's just conjecture, really.
Now the moon, the diameter is only about the 3/4 the size of the United States. It's only 2,500 miles across, not that big.
Mm-hmm.
So if it just skimmed and just barely touched the Earth, and had enough English on it,
it could work. Yeah, no, you're right. It could have just barely grazed the Earth and just taken off, the first layer, so to speak, and then got sucked into our orbit, and that's where we see it now. That's possible.
Yeah, but it probably isn't likely. We would see massive. But what else would it have been? It would have to be something very huge to hit the Earth to cause scorching and even sediment that they've found. Randall Carlson has found all over the globe this thin layer of what was probably a meteor striking. It's like a dark layer of soot, fire.
I think there's a lot of, this that we will find if we haven't found a lot of it already in the way of catastrophic events happening on Earth. And again, I think it's just a natural course of the way things work. Every celestial body at one point or another is hit by asteroids or space debris or something like that. So, why wouldn't it be that, just one day it happened to be a very, very large asteroid that, took out a good part of the world, really, at that point in time? It's plausible. It seems natural to me that would be what would happen.
The one that hit the Earth, so they say, that got rid of the dinosaurs, was 7 miles, the size of Manhattan. The crater's huge. What is it, like 1,600 miles across, right off the down under in the Gulf, whatever, the Baja Gulf. Is it the Gulf of, not the Gulf of Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula? That's where it is, down there, South America. Pretty awesome stuff, man. All right, we're gonna let Brian Forrester just say what he has to say for the rest of this segment, and then you and I will finish up.
Okay.
So we'll let him say everything he needs to say. Here we go.
It's hard to imagine and comprehend just a rock from outer space impacting planet Earth. It would cause so much destruction. It set us back 13,000 years in technology where we could be traversing the stars right now. It's hard to tell what would happen if these events didn't go down, but it's kind of sad to think about that we missed out on this technology that was so advanced 13,000 years ago. And how did these civilizations learn this technology to build these megastructures? Boggles the mind. Brian, I know you're a busy guy and you're going to be getting back to Egypt soon. Tell us, what's your next expedition?
Well, unfortunately, the borders of Peru are closed right now, but hopefully by the 26th of April, they'll open. I've got a flight for May 2nd that I'm hoping to be able to get on. And I just want to go home and hang out for a while. We have a a tour in June of Peru and Bolivia, looking at the ancient megalithic sites, including, of course, Pumapunku and Machu Picchu. Then we have another one focusing on the elongated skulls in August in Peru and Bolivia, and another one in November.
Stunning stuff, Brian. We're going to be supplying the original link below to Brian Forrester's YouTube channel, his website. Make sure you follow Brian on his adventures. He's got tons of evidence on his website in regards to the megalithic structures that we talked about today. Brian, it's been our pleasure having you right here at Third Phase of Moon. You be safe over there.
Okay, it's always a pleasure to be with the Cousins brothers. Aloha.
It's pretty interesting stuff. I, for one, think that those skulls were elongated on purpose, and they think, I don't know, some people think, not everybody, that they were trying to emulate what the aliens looked like. I don't know.
I believe that actually holds some merit. If you look at statues of Nefertiti or Akhenaten, which I think I'm saying incorrectly, but if you look at some of those, Akhenaten, how is it pronounced?
Akhenaten.
Akhenaten. Okay, thank you.
Well, if not, I'll fix it all up for us.
Yeah, I think I've been saying it wrong for a long time. But that being said, you see some of these statues, and they do have the elongated skulls. Now, obviously, there are cultures in our world today that do practice this, and they do it through a very forcible method of, binding the skulls at a very young age. And one of my understandings is the reason that they idolize this aspect of their gods or the aliens is because it directly correlated, again, to consciousness and the level of consciousness these beings were on. So it was said that, someone like Nefertiti was on a different level of consciousness and perhaps closer to the source or, metaphysical worlds as we know. And, obviously aliens have been accused of sort of holding the same perception or living in the same space. It would make sense that if we weren't up to the same scale in that level, that we would idolize them instead of, perhaps trying to attain the same level of awareness as they had.
But don't you think they would have realized after, 20 years of doing it that it's not really working, that they would stop?
Well, it doesn't necessarily mean that was the outcome they were looking for. It could be a homage to them, to their gods and so forth. I think a lot of what happens with cultures in that regard are more homages than they are practical. Yeah,
I think so. But it's painful, from what I heard.
Oh, yeah, that's what I understand too.
but they do it when you're younger because your brain is not had formed yet. It's not solid. It's still a little mushy, right?
Yeah, same with the bone in babies is very soft.
Oh yeah, even the bones. Okay. Well, interesting. We've done 3 episodes. They all talked about cataclysmic events 12,000, 13,000 years ago. We see the staining and the scarring on these megaliths, these structures, all over. Göbekli Tepe, Machu Picchu, Egypt, right? All over. So something happened. We know something happened, and it's great to hear Brian Forrester talk about aliens, because not a lot of these geologists, scientists, archaeologists, they don't want to talk about it that way. And I don't know why. They're afraid their careers and this and that, but I think at this day and age, maybe you disagree, but in this day and age, that should be the way to look outside the box.
I agree 100% with you on that. I mean, it's time to start considering other possibilities as viable sources in respect to archaeology. I mean, why not? What's the hurt in really trying to see if it fits somewhere within our understanding of extraterrestrials and so forth? If it doesn't, then it just doesn't. It's time to look outside the box, though. We're in this day and age, like you're saying, Rich.
Yeah, but I understand why they don't, because we don't have any proof yet. Until we find that spaceship or those tools that they use that could lift things with the finger, we have to think they use those softer tools, just a lot of man hours, a lot of wax on, wax off in those days, man. It's amazing. So I want to thank you for joining me. And, actually, we're all a team here. So we joined each other, teamed up for this series, and it was a lot of fun. Anything you want to add? And then after that, tell everybody where we can find you.
Sure. One thing I wanted to mention very quickly, and I'll bring it back to Atlantis. I'm going to be brief about this, but it's a very interesting thought. So when Atlantis was around as a civilization. It was essentially broken up into two hemispheres, if you will. More right-brained entities and beings existed on this side of the island, and more left-brained entities existed on this side of the island. Now, as I mentioned, that there were many different species that had taken up their civilization there in Atlantis, and one of them purportedly was the Greys, the way that we know them. The story goes like this. They spotted a comet in the sky. The entire civilization spotted this comet and realized that it was going to hit the Earth. They just weren't exactly sure where it was going to impact. So they were pressed, with two decisions. Do we find a way to blow it out of the sky and avoid this catastrophe altogether? Or do we look at this as some sort of natural course, reshaping of the Earth's history that has to happen and allow it without intervention? It's a very good question, and we can apply this to many different areas of our life. But essentially what they said happened was the right-brained individuals convinced the Greys, who were more left-brained, that we should let this just occur the way that it naturally would. And unfortunately, what ended up happening was this particular comet hit pretty close to where all of those Greys were living and just decimated a whole handful of them.
Wow.
So my question is this: if we were posed with the same question today, all right, I understand we're more of a left-brain society in every way. What should we do? What would we do? And that being said, my name is Michael Roser. You can find me at Dark Hour Paranormal and Third Phase, respectively. Rich, where can we find you and your fantastic work?
How dare you put a question like that out there and say goodbye in the same breath? How dare you?
It's the end of the trilogy. Gotta leave on a cliffhanger.
No! Now we got to do a part 4. I'm joking. It's a very great question. And before I tell everybody about where you can find me, I'll answer it. Or try to. What would we do today is what you're asking. If we found a meteor or something on its way here, on collision course with Earth, right? What would we do? That's the question, right?
That's the question. What would we do, or what should we do?
Well, we should try to deflect it. Are you kidding me? Do you know what would happen to society if one of those big things hit? If it's a mile wide, 7 times smaller than the one that wiped out the dinosaurs, it could still wipe us out.
Mm-hmm.
So imagine a 5,265 foot meteor hurling towards Earth at 40, 50,000 miles an hour or whatever. I mean, we would probably try to deflect it like they did in Armageddon, maybe not break it up, and do it that way. But I think we've already thought it out. All you have to do is push it off 1 or 2 degrees with some sort of rocket and propulsion, and 1 or 2 degrees, if it's depending on how far away it is, it would probably push it right past Earth.
I think you're right about that.
What do you think we're doing right now? Landing on asteroids.
No, that's absolutely correct. And the reason I brought this up, though, was to show and highlight the different ways of thinking of ancient civilizations that perhaps were more connected with the Earth and had that sort of insight. Again, it's a very right-brain interpretation. And if I were to be asked this question, yeah, shoot it out of the sky. You know what I mean? That's my belief. But in playing the devil's advocate, trying to look at both sides of, again, a natural process, or do we intervene? We have that choice.
So you're saying whatever the fate is, that's the fate. We got to deal with it? That's what you're saying?
That was one of the mentalities. I mean, I think that it was a little bit more personable, I guess, than perhaps just saying it's fate. Let's call it God's will. Okay, I don't like using either of those words, but to kind of describe what I'm saying, let God's will, happen the way it is, without the religious connotations, of course. Again, we're talking about, very spiritually advanced civilizations, assuming.
Yeah, well, I think they would be smart, and if they had the technology, they would push it out of the way. I'm not sure. I mean, nobody really knows, but it's an interesting thing to think about. But you also brought up the aliens, and so when you add aliens to the equation, who knows if they would purposely, want that to happen? Maybe they would push our little rocket out of the way, and say, nope, you got to let it hit the Earth. Nope, that's the rules.
Yep.
And maybe that's why civilizations are lost, because those are the rules. Or nobody, there were no aliens. It was just us here on Earth without the technology to blow asteroids out of the sky, without able to leave the Earth, and with the ability to make beautiful pyramids and structures and dig underground. And Anyway, it's food for thought for many meals, many nights. I can't.
Well said.
I love it, though. I love it. So you can find me at, here, Third Phase, and GUFON, GUFON. It's Greatest UFO Network, soon to be the greatest. I think it is. It's a nice network. It's not the greatest, but I'm there just about 7 days a week. And if I'm taking a day off, it's Sunday, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. You can find me on the live stream. I want to thank you for teaming up with me on this 3-part series with Brian Forster and everybody involved. It was very educational, I must say, and we will see you next time on Third Phase.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Rich.
everybody.